Get everything. I think we're by the two dots on Makkos, Beis Amid Beis. 2 lines from the top. Right, so we had said in the Mishnah, our strange Mishnah, which was telling us the examples, the unusual cases where you don't say kasha zama, where usually when someone says edus and they're found to be edim zaymim, it's found that they were imanu yisib b'makam pliny, right? The edim zaymim is someone who was told, who said the edus, and then we found out later, other edim came and said, no, you weren't there where you said the edus, you claim to have seen this edus, you were actually with us someplace else. So normally the rule is whatever it was that the Eidim were trying to do, that's what happened to them. But our Mishnah had said there were two exceptions to that rule. One is someone who tried to say about a Kayan that he's not a Kayan. His mother is really a Ben Grusha, or his mother is a Grusha or a Chalutza. So he, instead of getting that the Eid himself becomes a Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza, lose his Kuhuna, instead he gets Makkos. That was the first thing. The second then was if someone said Eidus, Shimon and Levi said about Ruvain that he killed someone b'shaygig. We don't say, so the dinner would have been that Ruvain has to go to Galus. We don't say that now that it turns out that Levi and Shimon and Levi are Edim Zayim, that they go into Galus, but rather they get Makkos. So where does this come from? Where does it come from that you can't apply to them Galus? Why not? Why don't you do kasha zaman? Amar shlakish, amar krahu yanas al achas arab. Who v'loy zayin? The pasuk says, "Legabi the din of Galus." It says he should run to one of these cities, the Ari Miklat. So it says an extra word, who? So who tells you only him, only the actual person who killed someone b'shagig and not an Eid Zayim? Rabbi Yechanan says a different reason. Rabbi Yechanan makal v'chaymer. Umahu. I would tell you, if this person, the person who killed someone b'shayg, had he instead done it b'mezid, he wouldn't go to Galus. Because, right, the din of Galus is only for someone who did it b'shayg. But if he does it b'mezid, let's say he did it b'mezid, but there was no hasra, so you can't give him misa. You don't say, okay, since we can't give you misa, we'll at least send you to Galus. No, there's no din of Galus for someone who did it b'mezid. Certainly, these Eidim Zaymim, they didn't do any mice at all. They only said something. They only said a dibur. They didn't do any maisa. So if someone actually kills someone b'mezid, can't get galus. Eidim who b'mezid didn't even do a maisa. They only said something. Eidin shelo yiglu. They certainly should not get galus. Sagt Gemara. No, that's not a cheshbon. It's quite the opposite. It's not a kula. It's not something that you see, oh, it's not so bad. He's not being someone who kills someone, b'mezid, doesn't go to Galus because he's not such a bad person. It's because he's a terrible person. That's why he can't go to Galus. Someone who did a ma'aseh b'mezid doesn't go to Galus because he doesn't deserve a kapara. He doesn't get he's not entitled to go to Galus. He doesn't get a kapara. He's going to have to burn in Gehenna. He's not getting a kapara in this world. But maybe, so we're trying to say, you try to say a kavachaymer. If someone who kills someone b'mezid can't go to Galus because the din of Galus is only on the shagig. So certainly Eid Zaymim, who, although he did it b'mezid, he didn't do a maisa. It was only a dibur. Certainly they should also not go to Galus. When it says the other way around, someone who killed someone who did a maisa and killed someone b'mezid, he's not entitled to Galus. But maybe an Eid Zaymim who didn't do a maisa, he just did a dibur, maybe he is entitled to get the kapara. We will let him go to Galus. It's a question, do you look at it being Galus as a punishment, or do you look at Galus as an entitlement, as a privilege? It's a privilege to go to Galus and get a kapara.
So isn't it also a benefit that it protects the the murderer from the Goal Adam, but it doesn't apply.
I think we're going to get to this in the second paragraph. We're going to talk about the gullus of someone who kills b'shaygig. I don't know if there's a din that of a goyal hadam where there's no din gullus. I don't know if he's entitled to kill him. Certainly, are you asking that this is another reason why maybe the mazid it's a chumrah that he can't go to gullus?
Right, because it's a benefit that he could protect himself from Goal Adam.
But I think what this we'll see later. But I don't think there's a din of that the goyal adam can kill him unless there's a din gullus. If you kill someone b'mezid, I don't think the relatives can kill him.
I mean, you see the time of David, these generals. That's not
they were doing all sorts. They were up to all kinds of injuries. Yeah.
What was the concept of Goal Adam?
What?
The one that who was that?
Knife?
No, yeah.
Where they David ran to knife, right? I think where the Gemara brings it up. Was it? Right. We had that. No, we had the two brothers, right? There were two brothers, and one Avner and Yayev, and it was Avner's brother who killed him.
I
he said,
who was who, but I remember it was a Goal Adam. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So it was just a rogue.
It was a whole argument, right? There was a question of whether it was b'shaygig. He said, I was trying. He said, I wasn't trying to kill him, and he said, why did you wound him? But he said, no, it was self-defense. So he said, you could have just wounded him. He said, but I can't, I'm not so precise. He says, no, you saw you shot him right in between his ribs. You knew exactly where you were going. Yeah, so he was coming as the goyal adam. I don't know. I can't bring a raya from that case.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I don't think there's if someone kills someone b'mezid, right, and there's no hasra, I don't think then it goes down. It gets downgraded to now he's the goyal adam could kill him. I don't think that's the way it works. Yes, they got to take him to Bezdin. Yeah, no vigilante justice. Allah, so this kal v'chomer is not a good kal v'chomer because the fact that someone who kills someone is worse than a aid zaymim, it was more of a reason to say aid zaymim should be able to go to galus. So you have to say like Rish Lakish, you learn it out from the pasuk. It says who v'loy zaymim amarula remez leidim zaymim in atayra minayin. Where do we see a hint of the din of Edom Zaymim in the Torah? In fact, the Gemara, Remez Leim Zaymim. What do you need a remez for? The Torah says it straight out that you do kasha zama. Remez Leim Zaymim shaloikim in that Torah. Where do we know? We brought explanations of why both a Ben Gusha Ben Chalutza, a Zaymim who says he's a Ben Gusha Ben Chalutza, or Edom who say that someone killed someone b'shaygig, that they don't get galus, that they become ben gusha ben chalutza. But how do you know you replace it with Makkos? Maybe you just can't give them anything. Where does the Gemara go? The Gemara is asking, where do you know that instead they should get Makkos? That's not kasher zaman. The chsiv it's tikos atzadik v'shius harasha v'hayim ben hakais harasha. Talking about with two people. The Torah is talking about where two people have a dispute. So the Bezdin says, you are the tzaddik, you win and you lose. And if the one who loses, he gets then he gets Makkos. So the Gemara asks, so this pasuk is hard to understand. How does it happen if two people have a dispute? They're arguing. One guy says, you owe me $100. The other guy says, I don't. What does Makkos enter into it? It's civil litigation. When you have two opposing parties, almost always they're arguing about money or something related to some kind of dispute. How does Makkos enter into a dispute between two people? So therefore we have to reinterpret the pasuk. We're talking about where Adam came and said that somebody who they said someone, it's not talking about where it's a dispute. It's talking about where we're talking about a regular case where someone did something wrong. A guy did something that you mechuyev a lav for, and Adam came and said, "Yeah, he did this lav," and v'asu Adam achrina v'tzdikos atzadik meikara v'shavinu lahani rishayim. They said, "No, this Shimon and Levi that said about Reuben that he was over on a lav, no, Reuben is really a tzaddik. He never was over on the lav." And they made the Rasha is Shimon and Levi. The Eid is the Eidim are the Rishayim. Then Then that Eid is, if it's a case where we're not able to apply the din of Kasha Zamam, then V'hayim ben HaKaisa Rasha, then you give Makkos. The V'tztikos HaTzadik V'shius HaRasha is not referring to the litigants in the case. The V'shius HaTzadik, V'tztikos HaTzadik is a reference to the person who the Eid Zayim had originally said he's Chayiv Makkos, and then when matzdik him, other Eidim come and say, no, these Eidim are Eidim Zayim. And then Vershius HaRasha is a reference to the Eidim themselves. So there's no dispute here. We're talking about a straightforward case of a Chiyav Lav. And that's what the Pasuk says on that is a Din Malkus. So this is the source that in Eidim Zayimim, where we're not able to apply, even though there's no reference here, there's nothing that shows that we're talking about a case where there's no application of the din of Kasha Zamam, but the fact that we're applying Malkus, we understand it must be talking about a case where it's not possible to give Kasha Zamam, and therefore you give Malkus. So this is the source. In fact, the Gemara, why are you looking? Why is it so hard to find out that if someone is Eid Zayman, and we don't know what to do with him, because we can't say he comes a Ben Gusha with Chalutza or gets Galus. So where do we see that he gets Malkus? The Torah says, Leisana Berecha Eid Shaka. You're not allowed to say false Eidus, and this Eid Zayim said false Eidus. So you should be Mechoiva Malkus for saying false Eidus. So just because of the straight up din that someone who said a false Eidus gets Malkus, that he wouldn't tell us that he gets Malkus. It's a lav, but it's a lav she'em b'maisa, and a lav she'em b'maisa gets no Malkus. Tanarabban. There are 4 rules that we said in Eidim Zayim. 2 of them are very familiar to us. Ein Nasa ben Gusha ben Chalutza ben Goyim L'Ari Miklat. Those are the 2 dinim that we said in our Mishnah, like where it's going to say that the Eid Zayim can't become a ben Gusha ben Chalutza from his Eidus, and he doesn't go into Galus. Now the new one, the din is if someone owns a shar muad, and the shar muad killed someone, he has to pay kaifer. He has to pay to the person to the family of the person who was killed. He has to pay kaifer. We'll see exactly what that kaifer is. So an Eid Zayim who tried to say that your shar killed someone, and it turns out he was lying. He was never there. He doesn't pay the kaifer in its place because of kasha zam. The Eidim karim be'avad ivri. In addition, Eid Zayim who said about a person, he said Ruvain stole, and Ruvain, we'll see exactly what the case is, but Ruvain therefore would be sold to pay for his Geneva. That doesn't apply to the Eid Zayim. Mishum Rebbe Kiva says the 5th thing, Afein Mishalman Api Atzman. Also, an Eid Zayim can't pay on his own admission. We're going to see what the reason is. I mean, the obvious reason that comes to mind is there's no Ma'ida B'Knas is Potter, and Eid Zayim's Hazama L'Chayra is a Knas. The Gemara is going to make that suggestion soon. Okay, look the first 2 things, we already explained the reasons why. We said why you can't apply Kasha Zam on them. So the 3rd thing that we said in our Brisa, you can't pay kaifer. Kasavri kufr kapar. This man the Amr, who says over here in Eid Zayim can't pay kaifer, is because he holds that which someone whose animal kills someone, the person has to pay a kaifer. That's a kapara. That's to get him a absolution for his negligence that he allowed his animal to kill. He has to pay that which he's paying is to get him a kapara. These guys, they don't have a shar. These Edim Zayimim, they don't have a shar that killed someone. They try to make someone owe the money of paying the kaifer, but they themselves are lying Edim. So they're not, they don't get that kapara for their animal killing. Their animal never killed. So Mantana Kufr Kapara. Who is the Mandama who says that kaifer, the din of paying kaifer is a kapara, and therefore an aid zaymim who was causing someone to pay it would not have to pay it. Amar Chizda, Rabbi Shmuel ben Yosher, Rabbi Yechon ben Broiki. That would it's a machlokes Tanaim. Rabbi Shmuel ben Yosher, Rabbi Yechon ben Broika is the Mandama who says that it's a kapara. The Tanya, the Nasam Pidgin Nafshay. The main is this is talking about the din of kaifer. Like we said, we didn't say exactly what you pay when someone's animal who's a muad kills someone. So the Torah says, "V'nasam pidyon nafshi." You should give a pigeon. You should give redemption for the nefesh that he killed. The main nizik. The Tanakama says you pay the amount, the value of the person who was killed. If someone's animal kills someone, the one whose animal it was has to pay the value of the person who he killed. He pays the value of the person who did the hezek. That means if Shimon's animal killed Ruvain, the Tanakama would say, Shimon has to pay the value what Ruvain is worth, and Rabbi Yechon and Shmuel says that Shimon has to pay what Shimon himself is worth. What would be the explanation of this machlekes? The Marsava Kufra Kapara, Kufra Mamayna. The Manda Amar, the Tanakama, who says that you pay the value of the person who was killed, he says, okay, your animal did a damage. It killed someone. You have to pay for the damage your animal did. It's a compensation. You're compensating your Yarshim for the damage, for the monetary damage they suffered. He doesn't get killed, right? It's his animal. It's not Chayim Misa for that, but let him pay at least for the monetary damage. But Rabbi Shmuel holds that you pay the demei mazik, the value of the person whose animal killed, has nothing to do with it doesn't really relate to the person who was killed. It relates to him. He's trying to get absolution for his negligence. So therefore he pays his own value. His value. You could also look at it a little bit, right? That it's sort of in place of him getting misa. He's not going to get misa because it's his animal that he was negligent with his animal and his animal killed. But in place of that, to get a kapara, he pays his own value, as almost as if he got killed in place of his own death. Amar Papa says no. Loi the kuli amakufa kapara. No, even the man the Tanakama who says that you pay the may nizik, he also holds kufa kapara. What the question is that even the Rabbanan who say that you evaluate the value of the person who was damaged, that's the way he gets his kapara, is by paying the value of the person who he damaged. He says he agrees it's a kapara, but they just disagree about how to evaluate what do you have to do to get your kapara. Zakdumara, my tamayu the Rabbanan. Why would the Rabbanan say it? It makes more sense. We said this far. It makes more sense that if the kapara is for the person who did the damage, then it should pay his own value. So why do the Rabbanan disagree and say ben the nizik shamina? So never hasha shalamata or the lamayla, but never hasha shalamata. Malam ben the nizik, afkam ben the nizik. It says hashasa. By kaifer, it says in kaifer yushasalav. We use this lashon of kaifer that if it's imposed on him, kaifer, and it says also lamaila by someone who pushed a pregnant woman. It says kashi yasalav bala isha. He caused her to miscarry. You have to pay that which the husband of this woman imposes on him the value of the vlad. So over there, the person who hit a pregnant woman he doesn't pay his own value. He pays the value of the vlad that he caused the woman to miscarry. So too over here, since we have the lashon hashasa in both of them, both cases hashasa means the same thing. It means to pay b'denizik. So that's where the Rabbanan come from. Yishmael disagrees with this. He says, "V'nasan pidyon nafshay ksiv." Torah says pidyon nafshay. So pidyon nafshay means He has to redeem his own nefesh, and his own nefesh is b'devei mazak. Rabbanan en pidyon nafshik in pidyon nafshik. It does say pidyon nafshik. Mikra shaminan, but then nizik shaminan. Hashasa tells you that even though it says a pidyon nafshik means he has to redeem his nefesh, doesn't mean with his own value, but rather with the value of what he damaged. So we've done with the third of the four cases where we don't apply kasha zama. We also say veinim karm be'eved ivri. The also is not sold as an eved ivri. Savar Ramnuna lemeimer hanamil hecha de islay lidei the bigdu line is daven inu nami lam is daven. Rabbi Ramnuna wants to say, when do we say that we don't sell an eid zayim as an eved ivri? That's with his hecha de islahu lidei islay lidei, where he himself has money. The migu line is daven inu nami lam is daven. If the person, we're talking about the person that he was trying to say the edus about. So if that person had money, so he wouldn't have been sold as a eved because he could just pay the geneva. So we say the migadu islay, the migadu iu. I'm sorry, I keep losing the place. Since the person that they're saying the edus about is not getting sold, the edim also won't get sold. But if the person that they were saying the edus about does not have money, even though the edim zayim themselves have money, so they'll say, "Listen, we don't want to get sold. We'll pay the money instead of going into servitude." Even so, mizdavnu, because you say kasha zamam, they were trying to get this guy. They said about this guy he stole, and he didn't have money, so he would have been sold. So even though they have money, they want to get out of it by paying that amount. They still get sold into slavery. Zakt Gemara, is this a svar of a lemelei iant havalach mihava mizdavnas ananamilei mizdavninan? They let the Edom Zaymim say, listen, why are you selling us? If you would have had money, you would have been sold. So just look at it that you oppose to kasha zamam. Put us in the same position as you. You get the choice that you could either pay or go into slavery. Give us the same choice. We could either pay or go into slavery. Why are you saying? Because the person that they said the aid is about doesn't have money, will apply that same circumstance us. We're not in the same boat. Ella Savara, so we have to change what Ravuna said. Savara Mema, Hanimicha de Esley, Oila de Day, Oila de Tu. This that we don't sell is where either one of them has. If either the person that they said the aid is about has money, so then they could say we never try to sell him into sale. We knew he would pay. Either to do, or if they themselves have money, they could say put us in the same position of him. Hamnuna would say, even though we said in the Brisa that he's not Nimker as an Eved, that just means to say in a case where either the person they spoke about or the Edom Zaybim, no, if either of them have money, then it's not sold. But if neither of them do, then we do Kasha Zama. That's Hamnuna's contention. Rava says no. I disagree with Hamnuna. Under all circumstances, he's not sold. It's a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Lagabe being sold into avdus." If someone who stole, it's only him, but it doesn't apply to someone else. It wouldn't apply to an eitzeb. B'shum Rebbe Kiva Amru. My time under Rebbe Kiva, right? So we said in the Mishnah. I'm sorry, we said in the Brisa, Rebbe Kiva says a last din that he's not sold based on what he himself says. I'm sorry, not sold. You don't do kasha zamam based on his own admission. So my time in Rebbe Kiva, kasava knasahu, he holds that which you pay knas, that which you do a kasha zamam is a knas. It's a penalty. It's not compensatory. It's not getting back what the damage you did. The knas in mishalom al piatzmai, and the rule is a knas doesn't pay through admission. Amarava teda, I'll bring you a raya. Shalir asu ma'isa v'neraganu mashalman, because he hasn't done anything, right? The Eid Zaymim, as we said before, there's only a narrow band in which we apply the din of kasha zamam. It only applies if the person already it got to a point that there was a gemar din, but not where it was actually applied. If he actually applied, if the person we had spoken about, he said, he owes $100, if he actually paid the $100, at that point it's too late for him to pay, for the Eid Zayman to pay Kasha Zamam. So he never did anything. So the only case where you say Kasha Zamam is where nothing was done to the person who said the Eidus about. So how could it be compensatory? The guy never paid, right? Kasha Zamam, we said, doesn't apply where a person actually, what the Eid Zayman tried to do was carried out, where the verdict was put into place, where the sentence was applied. So how could it be moment? It has to be a knas. The Gemara says a second. So that was Rabba's Raya. Rav Nachman says because the money is still in the hand of the Bailam, right? The person that the Edom spoke about, he still has his money, because if he would have paid, like I said, there'd be no Kasha Zaman. Zak Namara, my Niyadol Yasa Maisa, Hainu the Rabba. The Gemara says Rav Nachman's time is really the same as Rabba's. What is he saying different? Zak Namara, Rav Nachman. One says Rav Nachman was really restating the same thing that Rabba said. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Eid Zayman Meshalim Lefi Chalka. And Eid Zayman pays his share. What does that mean? My Meshalim Lefi Chalka. What does it mean he pays his share? If it's coming to tell you that each one of them, that if you have two Eidim Zayman, right? Reuven and Shimon and Levi said about Reuven that he stole $100, and we're saying that each one of them, Shimon and Levi, each pay $50, and Reuven gets back $100 in total. Tzina, we already have that in a Mishnah later on. That there's different taichin of Mishalshim, but the end result is the same. We divide up the money when there are Eidim Zaymim, we divide up the money amongst, let's say there are three Eidim, each one pays a third. If there are three Eidim Zaymim, we don't say each gets a third of 30, each get 13 Hakoyas, each get 13 Malkus. If they were, let's say, said Ben Gush and Chalutz or Galus, or they were trying to be Mechayiv someone Malkus, you don't say that the Eidim Zaymim divided the Malkus amongst themselves like you do with the money. They each get the full Malkus. That's a Mishnah later on. So do we have to tell me, Hai Mishalem Lefi Chalkai, Hai Mishalem Lefi Chalkai? What do we need a Meira to tell us what already said in a Mishnah, that you divide up the money? Ella, going to Itzim Chad Minayim. The Mishalem Pal Gadide. What it's coming to tell you that Mishalem Lefi Chalka is where only one of them had Hazama. There were three Eidim, and one of them was Huzam. So we say that he has to pay his share. So is that true? That's not true. Until all the Eidis is Huzam. That's not just name, it's all Shloisha. However many Eidim there are, they all have to be Huzam, or else there's no Din Hazama. So how can you say one pays without the others? Rava says no. We're talking about a case where an Eid was Maida. He said that I said false Eidis. He said I said that Ruvain owes $100. And I'm telling you right now, I wasn't even there at the time that I claimed to have said this Eidus. He made himself into an Eid Zayman. So the Rishonim explained this. The problem is that the Eid is saying, I wasn't there. Now the rule always is that you can't retract an Eidus. You can't say that my Eidus that I already said, that has the force of Eidus. Right? One person can't. He said it together with the second person, so there's two Eidim. He doesn't have the ability to retract, to undo what he said. So what's going to happen is his Eidus is still going to be carried out. You're still going to make Reuven pay the $100. Once Reuven pays his $100, it can't be a din of kasha zama. Even though he's admitting to the hazama, there can't be a hazama where the person actually had the sentence carried out on him, and he's going to have the sentence carried out because his Eidus can't be retracted. So we're not talking about where he said, I wasn't really there at the time that I said that I claimed to have seen Reuven steal the $100. He's talking about where he said, no, I was, he comes into a city and he says, listen, I feel like I'm about to die any minute. I want to get off my chest. I was an aide and I was huzam in a different bezdin. And, I ran away and they were never able to impose on me the kasha zamam that I was supposed to pay. The other aid is not here. There's only one aid here. So the Gemara, command like Rabbi Kiva, the Ikariyu Amar, and Mishal Piatzmai. Gemara says, but then you have the problem that Rabbi Kiva says Hishita that there's no that this is why we'll bring this up here. That Rabbi Kiva says, and Edis Hazama, you can't pay based on your own admitting. So over here, he's admitting that he was an Eid Zayman and that he's responsible to pay. How could he pay based on his own admitting? It's a knas. He can't admit to a knas. So no. We're talking about a case where the whole Edis, everything happened. The whole thing was carried out in the other bezdin. There was a hazam. I said Edis, and then Edim came and they were mazim. They were mazim me, and they were mazim the other fellow also. So therefore, I had to pay. I was mechuyev to pay money, and I ran away before they could actually get the money from me. So the truth is, this is not really Edom Zaymim anymore. There's a lien on him from the court, right? We're talking about the marshal. You can't. It's almost like, let's say, right? Someone's Eid Zaymim, and the marshal comes and says, you got to pay your $100. He says, okay, I'll pay the $100. So the marshal says, okay, give me the $100. He says, no, I just admitted to it, so I don't have to pay it anymore. Once it's already at the point where you have to pay, it's not admitting. So now, once the Bezdin made the Gemara, it's no admitting anymore. That's not being moida as an Eid Zaymim. So Sagadat, so why Taka? What's the chiddush that he has to pay his chelik? Maybe, since like we said, you can only be mechuyev as an Eid Zaymim when the whole Eidus was huzam. But over here, he's the only one here. The other aid is not present, and his saying that I was mechuyev in another town, can only oblige him to pay Reuven the money, but it can't apply. Let's say Shimon was the one who said that he can't get Levi, the other aid, to also pay. Levi's not his admitting doesn't have anything to do with Levi. Levi denies the whole thing. He says there was never an Edus and there was never a court and none of this happened. They couldn't get Levi to pay because of what Shimon, his fellow aid, said. So maybe that's considered part of the din that no, that's only Gabi the Edus. The Lagabi, the payment afterwards, one can pay without the other. Let's try to do this Mishnah. It's a short Mishnah. It's like the Mishnah. They say this about someone that he was Megarsh's wife, and he didn't give her a ksuba. Meaning he didn't give her the 200 zuz that he promised her in the ksuba, and he didn't give her the nichsei tzayin barzel that's also written in the ksuba. It's like the Gemara says, now he can't say that he has to pay. Let's just look at the 200 zuz that he was supposed to pay in the ksuba. It was a false aid. He said Reuven owes his wife. Reuven divorced his wife, and he owes her the 200 zuz from the ksuba. You can't say now, because he said false aids, now he has to pay Reuven the 200 zuz, because it's not really 200 zuz. Because now Reuben's married to his wife, but maybe tomorrow he'll divorce her, and he will owe the 200 zuz. So it's a potential. It's an option. It has value, but it's not worth fully 200 zuz. He didn't fully cost him, because if he had Reuben paid the 200 zuz, he wouldn't have to pay it in the future. If he died, his Yarsha wouldn't have to pay it. So we say, so we make we make an estimate of how much someone would pay for the value of a ksuba, the worth of the possibility of paying the ksuba. So we want to ask the question, Ketza, Shomer, Amar Chizda Babal. Chizda says, you look at how much someone would pay to take the 200 zuz that the Baal has, and say that if the Baal eventually has to pay the ksuba, that he'll pay it instead, which is he's not gonna, he's going to pay a pretty hefty amount. Like the guy's getting 200 zuz right now, and maybe someday in the future, maybe the wife, if Reuben divorces his wife or if Reuben dies first, then his wife will come take the 200 zuz back from him. From Nasa Bar Isha, I'm a Isha. No, he says the other way around. You take the schus of the Isha, which is a much smaller amount. It's what would someone pay to take the wife's right to get the ksuba? So that's if you think, first of all, you're not getting anything right now, and then you have to go get, if the husband dies, you have to go get from the Yarshei Baal the 200 zuz, you got to go track down the assets and go collect it. Or if he divorces them, you're going to have to get it from the husband who's probably in the divorce code is not known for a place it's easy to find assets. So it's worth much less. Amra Papa Beisha Ubiksubas. The Papa says, by the way, so the stock we pass on like the same. The second thing that you only get the value of what the woman's right to get a ksuba. That's what you have to pay for being an Eid Zayman who try to falsely get the man to pay his ksuba. And it's only the ksuba as opposed, it doesn't include the nichsei malug. The Eid Zayman could say nichsei malug is what the husband has a right to use during the term of the marriage. So he said the Baal says, you caused me to lose. You were trying to get me to lose the rights to all these orchards that she was letting me use while we're married. If we're going to be divorced, and I'm not going to get to use them. The Eid Zayman could say about that, listen, I didn't know. What says in the ksuba, the 200 is clearly, I know I'm causing you that. You have proof that I knew about this. But what's in the ksuba, as far as nichsei malug, that's not written into the ksuba, so therefore you have no right to be going to that from me. Okay.